Today we're going to begin our summer series on the life of David, Israel's greatest king, a king who began his life as an obscure shepherd boy, but ultimately would become a warrior who brought rival nations to their knees. He's an amazing, amazing man. He's a king that is described as a man after God's own heart, but he's also a king whose personal sins devastated not only his family, but the nation. In triumph and in tragedy, this king points forward to a greater king to come. And so throughout this summer, we're going to be looking at the different seasons in the life of David as we look at his biography. But long before David arrives is the story of an often overlooked woman named Hannah. And that's what we're going to talk about today. There's a book written by a guy named David Brooks called The Second Mountain. It talks about the frustration a lot of people feel as they launch out into life. They leave college and they feel empowered, they feel inspired, but many of our young people still are admittedly clueless regarding the most basic questions of all. What makes a person happy and what makes life significant? Brooks writes that many young people are graduating into limbo. They're floating and plagued by uncertainty. They want to know what specifically they should do with their lives. And so this is what we do. We hand them the great empty box of freedom. Freedom, we say, leads to happiness. We're not going to impose anything on you. We're not going to tell you what to do. Enjoy your freedom. And after a few months, the students put down that empty box because they are drowning in freedom. What they want is direction. What is my freedom for? How do I know which is the path that I'm supposed to take? So then we hand them another big empty box of nothing. That is the big box of possibility. Your future is limitless, we tell them. You can do anything you set your mind to. The journey is the destination. Take risks, be audacious. But this mantra doesn't help them for very long either. If you don't know what your life is for, how does it help to be told that your future is limitless? What they desire more than freedom is wisdom. What is life for? What makes it good? What makes it worthy? So then we hand them the empty box of authenticity. We say, look inside yourself. Find your true inner passion. You are amazing. You are a snowflake. You are a sunbeam. You're a skittle. Find your truth. This is useless too because the you we tell them to consult for life answers is the very thing that hasn't formed yet. So they put down that empty box and ask, what cause can I devote myself to that will inspire me and give meaning and direction to my life? At this point, we hand them the emptiest box of all, the box of autonomy. We say, you're on your own. It's up to you to define your own values. No one else can tell you what's right or wrong for you. Discover your story. So my question this morning is, how is it that in regard to the biggest question of all, where can I find significance, we as a culture have nothing to say? I can't think of a better setup for our study of the life of David. If you have your Bibles, and I hope you do, flip to 1 Samuel chapter 1. To say that David is important in the Bible would be a massive understatement. We have more biographical material on the life of David than any other person in the Bible except Jesus. Outside the narratives of 1 and 2 Samuel, David gets mentioned 241 times in the Bible, 182 in the Old Testament, 59 in the New. To the Jewish people, David was more than just a historical figure. He was an icon, a symbol of Israel's past greatness and her future hope. His story has all the elements of an epic drama. He begins his life as a shepherd boy, the runt of Jesse's family. And yet, through a stunning act of courage, he becomes a warrior who defeats the massive giant Goliath. He goes on from there to become the most popular person in Israel, and then Israel's greatest king. In addition to being Israel's greatest statesman and warrior, he also is her most prolific songwriter. God describes David as a man after his own heart, yet it is his personal life that became an issue. Devastated not only his own life, but his family and his nation. The story of David for us, however, is more than just the interesting story of a great man. David's story lays down for us the pattern of salvation. It creates this silhouette, if you will, that the Messiah will one day step into. David's story occurs at a time when Israel wants a king. They're hungry for a king. Up to this point, they see God as their king, but they are looking for something a little more tangible. They're looking for a physical king like the other nations had, a king who will give them a sense of national pride, a king who they believe will guarantee them prosperity and security. And that's where David's story connects to ours. See, we're also searching for three things. I think if we're being honest, we would say that we are all searching for identity, security, and happiness. Identity, where all of us are looking for something that gives us a sense of self-worth, a sense of significance. And the question that we're going to ask this morning is, what is that for you? What is the thing that you're searching for to give you significance? Is it how smart you are? Is it how much money you make? Is it how pretty or good looking you are? How healthy and intact your family is? Are you the kind of person who's always comparing yourself to others? Like your whole day can be ruined by catching a glimpse of someone else's life on Instagram that looks better than yours, right? They have more friends than you. Their house is prettier. You're doom scrolling through Instagram and you come across a lady who's just made brownies. And you don't even see the brownies. All you can do is look through the brownies to this beautiful kitchen that's in the background and wonder, why don't I have a kitchen that looks like that? Your self-worth constantly rises and falls based on how well you stack up, based on how intelligent your kids are or what schools they got into. Or how about this? Are you the kind of person whose self-worth is on the line in every competition? You're the kind of person who can't stand losing because a loss is an indictment or a verdict on your worth. Or security. What do you look to tell you the future is going to be okay? Like if you were to fill in the blank, as long as I have blank, everything will be all right. As long as I have my job, as long as I have my 401k, as long as I have my family, as long as I have friends around me, as long as I have my spouse or my health. Maybe it's just you. Maybe you're like, you know what? As long as I have me, I'm so amazing. If I lost everything, I could start over and rebuild. Or happiness. What makes life right now feel like it's worth living to you? What's the one thing that without that thing, you wouldn't really want to go on? Finish this sentence. I couldn't imagine a good life without blank. Couldn't imagine a good life without being married. Without money, without success, without freedom, without the admiration of my friends, like the acceptance of the friends around me, the approval of my family. The search for those three things, identity, security, and happiness, is what our generation yearns for. And it's what the story of David is all about. The story of David, however, as I said, doesn't begin with David. It begins with a woman in pain. That's often how God works, isn't it? When we think about significance, we think that God's going to start with the giant moment, the battlefield, the crown, the victory parade, but God usually starts in obscurity. It's in the prayer closet. It's in the season of waiting. It's in a place of disappointment. Before David was anointed, before Goliath fell, before Israel ever knew his name, God was already moving through the prayers of a broken woman named Hannah. And her story asks the same question every person wrestles with. Where do we look for identity? Where do we look for security? And where do we look for happiness? Number one, the pain of unfulfilled expectations. 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 2, he being Elkanah, had 2 wives. Okay, so now's a good time as any to point out that polygamy is never condoned in the Bible, but it is tolerated. That just about every time you see it, it causes problems, which we all know to be true. Marriage to one person is hard enough. Imagine being married to multiple people. It causes not in my marriage, obviously. Marriage is super easy and we just love each other unconditionally. There's never any issues, right? Obviously, the ideal is what God created, right? In the Garden of Eden, one man, one woman united for life. But Elkanah, in this story, 2 wives. One is called Hannah, the other Peninnah, I think. I don't really know how to pronounce her name, so just for the sake of today and for you to remember the story, and because it's almost lunchtime, I'm going to call her Panini. Okay? Panini had children, but Hannah had none. Verse 3, year after year, this man went up from his town to worship and sacrifice to the Lord Almighty at Shiloh. Whenever the day came for Elkanah to sacrifice, he would give portions of the meat to his wife Peninnah and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah, he gave a double portion because he loved her. That's weird, right? Right? The plate of your favorite wife comes by, and you give her a look, and you're like, I see you. I got you. And you give her 2 steaks, right? You put 2 steaks on her plate, and you're like, I got you, girl. You're good. Why did he do this? Because the Lord had closed Hannah's womb. That's Hannah's hurt, by the way. She's barren. And it says that her rival kept provoking her in order to irritate her. So, who had closed her womb? Why is she barren? The Lord did it. Was it because something that Hannah did? No, it's not because of that. God had done it for his purposes and his glory. Verse 7, this went on year after year. Whenever Hannah went up to the house of the Lord, her rival provoked her till she wept and would not eat. Hannah's deepest pain was not simply that she couldn't have children. Her pain was that she felt incomplete because of it. In her culture, motherhood was everything. It wasn't just a desire, it was tied to her worth, it was tied to her value. And every year she was reminded of what she didn't have. Every year, Peninnah rubbed salt in her wound. Every year the ache grew deeper, and it says she wept and she wouldn't eat. She was crushed under this weight of disappointment. Having kids was the main thing that women did back then, the main way that they brought value. Old Testament scholar Walter Brueggemann says it like this: barrenness in any ancient text is the effective metaphor of hopelessness. For without children, there was no foreseeable future for yourself, for your family, or for your people. Now, I know us, and I know that we all feel self-righteous, like we have progressed beyond this, right? We would never be this way. And for the most part, we have progressed beyond this. but we just replace it with something else. We have our own new versions of this. And for now, the point is that the primary thing in Hannah's case, the primary thing that gave women value in the culture, Hannah had none of it. What made matters worse is that her rival, Peninnah, had lots of kids, and she used it to torment her. The word there, irritate or grievously irritate in verse 6, is not that you're getting on my nerves. It's not like, oh, you're just annoying. It's not that kind of irritation. In Hebrew, this phrase means literally to roar or to thunder. And interestingly, it's the only place in which this word is applied to someone's inner condition. Usually the word is used to describe an actual storm or like a hurricane. And this is what Hannah feels like on the inside. Her heart is tormented. Her heart is this hurricane of unhappiness, this frustration, this insecurity. And I think many of us probably know what that feels like. Either you've felt it or you're feeling it now, or I hate to tell you this, you may feel it in the future. But Elkanah, her husband, now I think this is what we say in the South, bless his heart. He's a sweet guy, but he's pretty clueless, as most men are with their wives or wife. Look at what he does. It says her husband Elkanah would say to her, Hannah, why are you weeping? Why don't you eat? Why are you sad? Why are you downhearted? Don't I mean more to you than 10 sons? You got to love this self-confidence in this guy. Like, hey, babe, just being with me is better than 10 sons. Right? He's already tried the whole double portion, here's meat and mashed potatoes and all of the things solution. That didn't work. Now he's like the love doctor. He's like, I'm going to make this right. I'm going to fix this situation. My love can make it all better. So before we go any further, let's just stop and ask, where is this happening to us? Right? We congratulate ourselves on being a culture, on how we progressed in life and in the world. We no longer judge a woman solely by how many kids she can have. But every culture has things by which they assign value, things that are important. In our culture, for women, it may not primarily be childbearing abilities anymore, but it is maybe how pretty they are. It's their looks, it's their appearance, it's how beautiful, how thin they are. Listen to this. Historians say that our society is the first one in history to have a pervasive problem of eating disorders among young women. Why? I mean, obviously the answer is complex, but one reason is societal. Our culture says this is how you have value. And so little girls grow up learning that you're supposed to look a certain way, and if you don't look a certain way, you are second class. So we have a lot of girls who are roaring inside with a hurricane-type force at work inside them. And while their rivals on Instagram and TikTok provoke them continually. I'm focusing here in this case on young women because that's what this story is about. It's about a woman, but young men are told similar things. Your significance is how athletic you are. Your significance is what school you get into. Or your significance is what kind of earning potential you will have. So let me ask again, where have you felt judged by this culture? Where are you inwardly roaring this morning? A lot of times, as it was with Hannah, it's not even a standard that you signed up for. It just kind of happens to you. You don't like it. You just feel the weight of it. It's crushing. Maybe like Hannah, we've been tempted to turn to something to fill that void in us. Maybe our lack of good looks has produced a drive in us to succeed. And that's how we're going to establish our worth. That what really makes us significant is how successful we are compared to others. Comparison can be a brutal beast. I used to compare myself to some of my other pastor friends who started out at the same time as I did, and I would just watch, and I would try and keep pace with them. And if I couldn't keep pace and our church wasn't growing to the same rate that theirs was, I would feel defeated. My issue now, thankfully, is not that. God's worked out the issue of comparison in my life, but now the issue that I struggle with is comfort. How comfortable can I be as a pastor? How easy is it? Instead of looking for the sacrifices, it's easier to just become comfortable. Maybe ambition isn't your thing. Seems like every time I say something about myself, or inevitably there's people in the congregation that are nodding their head, and you're like, yeah, like that, I understand that, like I resonate with that. And then there's some of you that are looking at me like, I don't know that you should be our pastor. Maybe that's true, but maybe it isn't ambition, but maybe there is some Elkanah in your life saying to you, don't worry if you're not enough in this area, my love will be enough. Maybe you're like, if I could just have a good family, if I could just have the love of my spouse, if I could just have like decently behaving children, that would be enough. And that's how you deal with those hurricane winds in your life, telling you that you're not enough. Or maybe you numb those hurricane feelings and insecurity and doubt through drugs or through alcohol or through other stimulants. But as with Hannah, it's just not working. For many of us, our situation is actually very similar to Hannah. Our culture is different, but it's not that different. Many women, even today, still feel like if they aren't married with kids, it's a key part of their identity that is missing. And it's not just sad for them, it's crushing. Which leads to part of the solution. Number 2, the turning point of surrender. Verse 9 says, once they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh, Hannah stood up. Some of your translations will say that Hannah rose. This is not just a random detail like, oh, after dinner, Hannah stood up and went into the living room. No, the word rose in Hebrew indicates a decisive action. It indicates that she stood up, resolved, having made a decision, having made a choice. And what was the choice? Verse 11, and she made a vow saying, Lord Almighty, if you will only look on your servant's misery and remember me and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head. So saying no razor will ever touch his head indicates here her intention to take the Nazirite vow. That's what you did if you wanted to dedicate your kid to the temple work. In those days, you couldn't just decide to become a priest. Like I decided to become a pastor and go to Bible college. No, in order to be a priest, you had to be born into the tribe of Levi. And if you weren't, the only way to become a priest was to take a Nazirite vow where you basically renounce your membership in your family, you give up all your inheritance, and you go and live at the temple. So basically, listen to this. Hannah is renouncing everything she would have wanted a son for in the first place. Taking a Nazirite vow meant that this child, if she gets one, this child would not grow up in her house. She wouldn't get the joy of having him around. He wouldn't provide for her in her old age. But something changed in Hannah. The circumstances didn't change. She's still barren, but something changed in her heart. For years, Hannah had prayed for a son, but now her prayer sounds different. She tells God, God, if you give me a son, I'll give him back to you. And she's surrendering the very thing that she wanted most. Wouldn't secure her future, wouldn't become the source of her identity. He would belong to God. This is the moment that Hannah moves from this state of control to this posture of surrender and trust. This is the moment she stops trying to use God to get what she wants and decides she's going to trust God whether she gets it or not. And notice what happens next. She doesn't have a child yet. Nothing changes externally. But in this statement, she renounces everything she would have hoped to obtain in a son. But when she's done praying, this is what she said in verse 18, or this is what it says. Then she went her way and ate something, and her face was no longer downcast. Her face was no longer sad. Why? Because peace had arrived before the answer did. Joy arrived before the miracle had taken place. Her circumstances were unchanged, but her foundation had completely changed. Hannah found a new source of identity and security and happiness. And what was it? What was her new source? For that answer, we turn to chapter 2. And it's the joy of finding that God is enough. My heart rejoices in the Lord, she would say. My delight, my joy is no longer found in having kids, but in God. Why? Because there is no one holy like the Lord. There is no one beside you. There is no rock like our God. One of the greatest lessons of Scripture, that anything we make ultimate, anything we prioritize above God will eventually crush us. Success cannot carry that weight. Relationships can't carry that weight. Your friendships can't carry that weight. Children can't carry that weight. Only God can. Hannah discovered that her deepest need wasn't ultimately a son. Her deepest need was God. And she found him to be enough, and everything changed. She says, there is no one holy like the Lord. There is no one beside you. There is no rock like our God. In other words, knowing you is the ultimate treasure. If I have you, I have the absolute approval of the only one who matters. And now, having found my identity, having found my security, having found my happiness in you, I am no longer dependent upon children to provide it. Have them, don't have them, I have you. This was Hannah's salvation. Learning to find in God what she had previously sought in having children. In verse 4, she contrasts then two different ways people go about trying to find identity, security, and happiness, and the result of each of those. She says, the bows of the warriors are broken, but those who stumbled are armed with strength. Those who are full hire themselves out for food, but those who are hungry no more. She was barren. She who was barren has borne 7 children, but she who has had many sons pines away. The Lord brings death and makes alive. He brings down to the grave and raises up. The Lord sends poverty and wealth. He humbles and he exalts. He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap. There are 2 ways to try and establish your identity, security, and happiness. One is the way of pride. You establish your identity, security, and happiness by the strength of your bow. Through how many kids you can have, or how beautiful you are, or how talented you might be, or how popular you are among your friends, your ability to earn money. The other way is the way of faith. You lean into God, you let Him be the source of all things. If you seek your identity, security, and happiness through the way of pride, you'll end up broken, hungry, and poor. But if you seek these things via the way of faith, you'll end up strong, fruitful, and abundantly overflowing. By the way, Hannah does then go on to have a son. His name was Samuel. He became the greatest prophet Israel had ever known. In verse 5, Hannah says, the barren has borne seven. Seven in Hebrew is the number of completion. The one son would do more for Israel than 10,000 other sons. One Samuel had more eternal significance than 10,000 other children. Look at verse 21. Indeed, the Lord visited Hannah, and she conceived and bore 3 more sons and 2 daughters. I just want to remind you that God is a good God. He loves to bless his people. And when Hannah changed her source of identity from bearer of many children to daughter of the king, God blessed her with multiple children. And I think it's important because it's in the story. We have to point out the text that you cannot hear this, that as soon as you get your heart right with God, God will give you what you wanted all along. That's really like just get your heart right and God will make you rich and fruitful. That's not the point of this story. But God is a God who loves to bless his people. And it's often when we lay down our idolatries, when we release the hold on things like success and beauty and fertility and family, right? When we release the hold that our heart has on those things, it's then that God puts a different version of those things, a better version, an eternally significant version of those things into our hearts. One Samuel given to you in faith is worth 10,000 things accomplished by your flesh. So what is the connection in all of this? The connection is this, that there is a parallel between Hannah's story and the story of Israel. Just like Hannah sought out identity, happiness, and security in a son, Israel sought those same things in a king. To Hannah, God said, Hannah, these things aren't found in sons. To the nation of Israel, these things aren't found in kings. So to both Hannah and to Israel, he says, identity and security and happiness are only found in me. There's also a parallel in Hannah's story and our story. Hannah looked to a son for identity, security, and happiness. Israel looking for a king. The question that we've raised today is, where are we looking? Where are we looking for our identity? Where are we looking for our security and our happiness? What one thing must you have for life to be good? What do you care the most about obtaining? What one thing could you not imagine life without? What would be devastating to lose? What are you yearning for that feels like life would never be complete without it? Is it marriage? Is it children? Is it success? Is it praise? Where are you roaring with dissatisfaction and jealousy right in this moment today? What is there that you feel so driven to obtain that it's like you have a hurricane roaring inside of you? And it's affecting you so much that you can't even eat. What are you seeking? How are you seeking it? Are you seeking to establish your identity through the accomplishments of pride or through the humility of faith? See, works righteousness is where we try to establish our goodness, our salvation through good works. We've just spent the last few months in the book of Galatians studying this. Being enough, accomplishing enough, doing enough. There are religious versions of works righteousness where you act good enough to earn God's favor. There are also secular works of righteousness where you accomplish enough to earn everyone else's favor. The gospel offers something different. Justification by faith, accepting what God offers you himself as a gift. That Jesus is actually all we need for our identity, our security, and our happiness. Your identity is found in being his child, in being his servant, doing his will, hearing one day, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Your security is knowing that he holds you in his hands and that no one or no thing can ever pull you from it. Your happiness is found in doing his will and knowing his pleasure and being assured that he will never leave you or forsake you. He's the king Israel is looking for, and he's the king that Hannah is looking for, and he is the king that you and I are looking for. And we sang about him today, and his name is Jesus. There's nothing you can do to earn his love. You receive it as a gift through the humility of faith, which leads me to the most important parallel, and that is the parallel between Hannah's story and the story of Jesus. Every Bible story points to Jesus, and this story is no exception. Years later, the Bible would tell us of a story of another woman who faced an impossible birth. Just this woman, though, the birth wasn't just improbable, it was impossible. And her name was Mary. Mary didn't have a husband, she'd never slept with a man, and yet she was told she would be pregnant. As with Hannah, for Mary, having a baby meant that the loss of everything that she had of significance. For a woman to be pregnant out of wedlock in Mary's day meant the loss of reputation, it meant financial hardship, it meant becoming a societal outcast, right? But like Hannah, Mary grasped the gospel, that God was the better source of identity, that God was the better source of security, better than reputation, better than power, better than money, and she surrendered herself to God's plan and found her identity, found her security, and found her happiness in him, even if it meant the loss of all of those other things. Mary expressed that hope just like Hannah did in a song. It's in Luke chapter 1. I didn't give it to him, but let me just read it to you. It says, this is what Mary says, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior. For he has looked on the humble estate of his servant. He has brought down the mighty from their thrones and exalted those of humbled estate. He has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he has sent away empty." Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Hannah gave birth to Samuel, who became a priest, Israel's greatest prophet, and the one who anointed Israel's greatest earthly king, King David. Mary gave birth to the one who would be the final prophet, the great high priest, the King of Kings, to Jesus. We want to read this story and we want to be like, you know what, I'm like Hannah, right? Hannah, like Jesus, would be an outcast to society. He'd be rejected by men. He'd be condemned as a criminal. Like Hannah, Jesus would pray for deliverance from that shame and curse. But whereas God answered Hannah, God turned his back on Jesus. Why? It was so that Hannah's real shame, our real shame, our God-forsakenness could be taken away forever, so that we could be restored back to our Creator. Our real need, our real shame and brokenness, the source of all other pain, is the source of all other brokenness, and it comes not from the fact that we don't have kids. It doesn't come from the fact that we aren't pretty or we're not successful. Our real shame comes from the break in our relationship with our Creator. That's what our soul aches for. That's what we desire. Our real problem is that we have lost the approval of our Heavenly Father and we are alienated from Him. We don't need more money. We don't need more kids. We don't need more success. We don't need any of those things to find significance or security. We need to just be reunited back to our Creator. And that's what Jesus, the Messiah, accomplished for us. By forsaking all others, took our place and would restore us back to the Father. Your family will disappoint you. Your friends definitely will disappoint you. Success is going to crumble. Money evaporates. And as hard as this may be to hear, you will not be as pretty as you are now. It fades. But Jesus is forever. This is what you've always been looking for, whether you've known it or not. This is for real. You can find joy, you can find security, and you can find significance in Him. And you will never be able to find those things in anything else. Jesus plus nothing equals everything. Everything minus Jesus equals nothing. It doesn't mean you have to stop asking for what you're asking for. Keep praying for children. Keep praying for a spouse. Keep praying in those ways. At the end of the story, God did give Hannah 6 kids because God is a good God and He loves to bless His people. But Hannah no longer depended on that son as a foundation for her life. She had God. And for Hannah, God was life. For us, Jesus is life. We have the King. Jesus plus nothing equals everything. That's the greatest gift God can give you. Let's pray.